Hi everyone, we welcome you all to this week Tech Tuesday webinar on OData concept using Cloud Application Integration Process. Today's speaker is Chandrasekhar K, who is a Principal Consultant from IPS Adoption Services. Before we start the session, let's go through some of the housekeeping tips. The webinar is for 1 hour that includes 15 minutes Q&A. You can post your queries in Q&A box, which will be answered at the end of the presentation. All participants will be muted during the presentation. The session will be recorded and will be available on our InfoSupport YouTube channel and Success Portal, where you will be able to download the slide deck. Please feel free to submit your suggestion or feedback for this session in the post-webinar survey. The Success Portal is a micro-learning platform that offers free, unlimited learning to all registered users. This feature-rich platform helps you learn and adopt to Informatica products better. The following are few important links that you can go over later. This will help you in your product adoption journey with Informatica. Over to you, Chandrasekhar. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Agenda. Today's agenda is we're going to see about OData. So OData overview and OData flow and endpoints. How we can utilize a CA at the cloud application integration thing, and what is publication, and extract data and system variables, and create a CA process REST service using an OData again. So, and the follow up on the demo session and Q&A. So let's get started. And what is OData, right? So in computing, the open data protocol is an open protocol that allows the creation and consumption of queryable and interoperable REST API in a simple and standard way. So if you want to expose any database thing, right, to over and seamlessly, if you want to connect using an REST API, so you can use this OData providers and you can expose any databases into a REST API. So OData is a REST-based and a standardized protocol. So it is a protocol and that provides an access to over the web. You can use the OData protocol to access data services from the cloud, including internal data source like those available with the JDBC connections. So if you have an internal source system which want to expose as a REST API, definitely you can use it, provided you have to connect with the JDBC connection. So OSS is a standard standard on data v4. The Informatica recommends that you use a OData v4, that version. Okay, so v4 is nothing but a version. The previous version that we have used v2. As it is this default version, your organization can expose data feed on an endpoint such as. So once you save and publish this connection, JDBC connection, you'll get this endpoint URL. Okay, it should talk about what is an version and what is a connection name and database name. Okay. And this is the old version and version v2, and this is the endpoint URL for that. And similarly, OData v4, you will get some v4 and then the connection name. Okay, maybe you can expose an XML or a JSON format. Both are supported here. And data flow. And when it comes to data flow, as part of this demo, right, just we expose a Microsoft SQL database. And then we exposed those data using a REST API. Again, we have used a client application. Client application, maybe it's a browser or third-party tool which has a REST API capability, or you can use a Postman, or you can use our cloud application integration, which can be access any third-party services using a REST API. Okay, so the underlying protocol is a OData, and it is sitting on the secure agent or a JDBC or a cloud agent. So we have to create a JDBC app connector and then we have to expose it. Okay. And OData endpoints, once you save, once you configure all this details about the secure agent path, jar file, then you have to save and publish. As and when you are publishing JDBC connection, you will get an endpoint URL which tells you how to access your data. Okay, and log into CAI in order to create a JDBC connection. So you have to log into IDMC platform. So there is a service, microservice is available, application integration that can be accessed using this application integration. And then once you log in, you have to click on new. You can find there is a wizard which will tells you app connection. Just select that app connection. It's an out of bus connection, whatever the connection is readily available to use, um, that is available here. That is available, just you have to configure thing. And OData sample, right? Just we have to select this JDBC generic cloud. If this particular type is not available, you have to go to administrator and you have to add a connector. There is an added connector is available. So add that connector so that it is ready to use for your app connection. And run on is nothing but a secure agent environment where you are going to run all this connection. So you have to choose a secure agent which have an access to your database. And this enabled like OData enabled cloud access enablement. So you have to provide that enable so that you would get an endpoint URL, and you would get an a REST API endpoints. Okay. So allowed user or data, maybe you can provide a group or a user. So if you want to specifically assign this security to a specific user, you can assign here. In case if you want to apply this entire group level, then you can provide a group level information. So the grouping and policy, everything is available in administrator. So you have to roles, right? A role, permission, all this you have to create first, and then you have to assign your, which is available in administrator page. So, and again, JDBC connection URL should be a JDBC URL and database going to access. And the JDBC jar file where you are going to place in a secure agent. So definitely you need to place a latest jar file which is supported by Informatica. I think for now 1.2 version TSL support, right? So the secure connection it is established 1.2. So you have to use 1.2 version, and you have to place a JDBC driver class file and then schema name. This up to this it's a database related. This one is a schema which is uh, belonging to your database again schema, and then username password is nothing but just you have to feed your username password for database. Okay. Once you configure this, once you configure, the connection would look like the similar to this one, and then the JDBC URL, database, schema name, path, the jar file of a particular database thing, and the schema name, filter. So object filter is nothing but the either you can give a table name, specific table name, or a multiple table names, or a particular view. In this case, just we provided a view, this example. Even you can expose data using a view as well as table. Okay. Once you save this connection, you have to save and publish the connection. You will get a two endpoints. One for Swagger. Swagger is nothing but just going to give a metadata about your connection. So what is the input you have to pass? What is an operation? What are the um, uh, operation, input, response? All this has been defined in a Swagger. So by going through Swagger, right, you can understand what operation going to perform, how we can invoke it, what is the expected request, or what is the content is expected. All this has been defined in a Swagger. So this is an endpoint which is going to consume in a third-party tools or a CAI or Postman. So going to you're going to see now how we can use an endpoint URL to access a data. So this is an endpoint. Once you publish a particular connection. So the publication is nothing but just you are deploying a code into an agent or a cloud hosted. Okay. So without a publication, you can't access the endpoint. So definitely you need to publish the data. As and when you publish the data, publish the connection, you will get an endpoint URL. looks like something like this. And then if you apply it in a browser, you will get a response like this. And in case if you want to access from a postman, you can also invoke it. Okay, and these are the system variable which is readily available. Okay, in order to apply some filter, some sorting, or if you want to apply some top level subset of data, or if you want to skip some records, all this is readily available in OData. So that can be formed as part of URL. Okay, so here order by app ID. So we are giving an app ID. Based on that app ID, it is descending or ascending. Okay, so whatever has highlighted, right, that is uh, next record or next subset of record can be accessed, or this can be used in your process for doing a pagination. Okay, let's say if I have 100 record, I cannot access 100 record, right, in a single call. Maybe if there is a restriction, let's say I have 1,500 or 2,000 or 1 lakh record to be accessed, I cannot access using a REST API. So in order to access the entire data set, so you have to do a pagination or a looping logic, so that you will get extracted all the data. So first 1,500, maybe you can set some limits, 1,000 record that can be accessed first time. When you're calling second time, you will next 2,000 record will be accessed. So the same thing is applicable in OData as well. And the structure will looks like this. Depends upon your database or a table name, right? This structure may differ. And I mentioned, right, we have a system variables readily available. One of this order and one of this second one is the top. So top is nothing but going to extract a subset of data from the top level. Only top 5 you're going to extract. In case if you're providing top 100, then you're going to fetch only the top 100 values. So in order to use the top, you have to feed some descending based on some ordering. Column has to be defined order by name. So based on a name, just we are extracting a data. Okay, and we are going to get the data in the response just top 5. So the same thing instead of browser, right? The same thing can be accessed using a postman. Again, they given the endpoint URL and you have to feed the top 5 or something and order by the column. We're getting that back. And the order by, right? So again, order by is one of the variable which will do sorting based on your column. Whatever the rating is, nothing but it's one of the column reside in a table, and based on that, it is just doing a sorting. Okay, ascending order or descending order, whatever you want, you can add. And the next system variable is called skip. Skip is nothing but it's a opposite to a top. Top is not just we are extracting only the top 2, top 10, top 100, something like that, but it is skipping. Skip is nothing but just you skipping the specific records. Let's say if I want to skip first 100, then you can give skip 100, so that the from 101 record will be visible for the customers. So top and the skip can be used together. So skip and the top 2. So basically it's going to read top 2, but they don't want skip first 2 records. So let's consider I have a record on 10 records. After 10, I don't want to see the first 2. So it is skipping. And from the third and fourth record, right, I want only the third and fourth. So it is extracting the third and fourth and order by some field rating. So one more system variable is called the filter. So in case if I want to, when you are extracting data, it's an huge, then I want to only, I'm interested in a specific location like a country, India, then I can use an equal, not equal, greater than, or any filter conditions. I can apply it off of the data and I can extract it. So this is the syntax which we have to apply when you are using filtering of record. So the record, and again, the OData functionalities are available. I have listed only few things. But in case if you want to understand the entire OData concepts, if you have anything else, right? So you can go through this document that they have given clearly. What are the things? What do they select? Select is nothing but you can select the fields. So let's say I have 100 column, but I want only out of 100 column, I want only 5 columns. So you can use this select a variable, system variable. So you can select the 2 columns, price and name. See here, they've selected only price and name. Maybe if they want a name and category, they can provide here. All this is available. Maybe you can go through this document. And um, let's jump into a demo. I'll show you how we can use our data, how we can create a connection, service connector, app connector, all this. So once you log in, right, you can see this application integration page. Once you log in, you have to click app connector. So the for first and foremost thing, you have to define a connection, JDBC connection. So this is available here, app connector. If you click app connector, you have to select the connection, nothing but generic cloud and then secure agent. Once you collected, and then you have to choose enabled. The OData has to be enabled. By default, it is no. This is for cloud OData, and this is for security purpose. In case only specific user has to access this type of OData, then they can provide only the user, specific user. This is related to your ISES user. Okay, you have to provide ISES username. Similarly, if you have a group, let's say I have a developer group, tester, or a QA group, or business group, then I can define in an ISES level. I can provide that value, and whatever the things we were discussed about this, right? So just a connection, JDBC, jar file, schema name, username, password, and filter. So this connection is already created. It has been already created. Just I will give you one thing. Um, okay, so the connection is been created. Just I've given this database name is test, and there's a jar file we are placed, and the driver name, schema name, and this is a username of a database. All, and the filter, object filter, is nothing but the table name or a view name you have to provide here. And once you save, right, once you configure this, save this connection, publish, and you can also test this connection. If it is successfully completed, then you will get a passed here. If it is any error, then it will throw one error. Okay, and then you have to go to, once you define this, you have to create a service connector. Okay, so this connection is passed. Now you'll, once you publish that, you will get a URL. So Swagger file, and this is a OData connection. So using this, you can extract the data, or you can use a Swagger file to understand what is the metadata all about. So let me pull this, right. If you copy and paste in a URL, it will give you what is an host path, endpoint, what is a consumer, producer, parameters. All this has been defined. So what is a table name or a field name? We have to extract, select. Select is nothing but we are selecting a particular field. Okay, how we can access a student, or what information we have to pass, ID, response. All this has been defined. Just is going to give you structure and what is an operation you have to call, how to invoke it. So basically, the Swagger file give you an idea what is a REST API endpoints all about. So now I will move on to the back to my process. So this is an endpoint. Once you come access this endpoint directly, so it is giving student and the other part. So in case if you want to access any data, right, asterisk top equal to 1, The top is nothing but you have to feed the name slash students and then top one. So you have to specify which object you're going to consume. So if you see right, as part of a response, we are getting name, ID, name, student gender, and the age, and it is giving only one. So let's say if I want to read all data, if you did not specify the top variable, system variable, you'll get all records. So it will give you some subset of record. In case if the data is huge, you can use pagination concept. This. So there is a pagination is available. Next page, how we can access. So it is showing right. Skip one. Skip one is nothing but there is a variable. It's going to skip the first record and it's going to provide the next one value. Okay. Pull this. And dollar skip equal to. I'm going to read. Sorry. So you need to specify order by, skip and order by ID. Based on ID, just I'm going to extract. See, so I'm at top level, just I'm skipping two and then top two and skipping two and order by ID. So we are skipping that first two and then we are extracting it rest of the values. If I want to top one, I will get the second one. If you want to skip two and top two and skip two, I'll get third and fourth record. Third record and fourth record. Okay. Now we'll jump into a process, how we can create a process or a service connector. So using this Swagger file, right? Using this Swagger file, we can generate a connection, service connector. So in order to create a process, we need a service connector, connection, and then process. Okay. Now we are going to create a service connector. So either you can define it manually or you can use a Swagger generator or a service connector generator from this. Let me open a create Swagger file. In case if it is a REST, then you have to use a Swagger file. In case if it is SOAP service, you have to use a WSDL one. Okay. I'm going to call that out. It is giving operation, what is batch, students information, all this. Creating the service connector here. So it automatically define what is an operation, what are the binding type input I need to pass, what are the binding type, what are the output, and what is the basic mechanism, and what is a request response content type, body. All this has been defined by default when you are defining a Swagger when you are creating a service connector using a Swagger file. It automatically picked up from the Swagger and define all this. Okay, action. In case if you don't know the Swagger file, then you have to define it manually. You have to go other option. You can also define it your own. So this connection is already created. Just I'll walk you through. So for sake of demo, right, just I'm going to use only this post student and then get student by ID. I'm going to pass an ID. I'm going to create it. So, okay. And the third one is just deleting by ID. So I'm going to delete a record by based on an ID and post, just we're going to post a student. So here, right, I can create a record. If you test here, so it's creating a record 23 and female 1009. This has been, I'll walk you through. Similarly, delete, we're going to delete the record and get is nothing but you have to pass an ID and you have to feed this selected. Selector is nothing but out of 100 column, I want only 5 or 2. Then I can use select. It is giving only age, gender, ID and name, but we don't find any age column because in the selection part just we removed. Now we are adding it as part of an input. Again, we will do a test. So now you can see that age is up here. Okay, age is up here. So the service connector, once you create the service connector, configure and tested, everything is done. You have to save and publish this connection. Once you publish, again you have to go to service app connection. You have to create an app connection. App connector which will give you two things. So you have to once you publish a service connector, you have to go to the folder where you store all this and the OData. You have to choose the same service connector OData, and then you have to define the host name, which is defined here. That host name. I've created this connection again. Maybe I'll show you. This is how, and then save publish. This connection is all been created. Just I will walk you through. Same, and it is pointing to the same service connector and the host name of this, and save and publish this process connection. Once you publish this connection, now we have to go to process. Go to process and you have to refer the service step. So whenever you want to invoke any third-party services or out-of-box connector, right? So you have to choose a service. You have to go to connection. Just now we published the connections, right? C and O data that has to be pulled here. O data connection, and you can define as students under defined category students. We have a lot of operation. Out of that, I'm going to use this get. Okay, and I need to pass ID one. This is the selected field. What are the fields you want? I want ID only. Can create. So let me, I've created a process already. Maybe I can walk you through the process so that you will get a better understanding. Similar to the previous one, right? Just I've defined, this is a binding type is nothing but REST or a event or a SOAP. So when you define a REST or SOAP, you can invoke from any third-party tool or a Postman or any applications or a curl command. Even you can use a curl command to invoke this process. So and I've deployed in a cloud and make it as an anonymous so that anyone can access the using this endpoint URL. And then I defined the processes you are to process ID, name, operation, age, gender. They have to pass. Depends upon the operation, right? So let's say if I want to create, I need an operation name. Um, Operation name and age and student. In case if I want to delete or read, I need only ID. I don't want all that part. So this is an optional now. So in the output, right, I've defined on one more variable, the OData response, which is pointing to the connection, same connection, CA connection. The type is nothing but the connection type. And we are referring that same object, process object. And the temp, right, just we assigned created a temp payload, which is pointing to again OData. And the get pick list is nothing but an ID. So you have to pass a pick list. So in order to add this, right, so I've added all this pick list thing, ID name. When you are selecting, right, get or get by ID, you have to feed how many columns or what are the columns you want to display as part of response. So this is the one thing. So you can, now you have hard coded, but maybe you can parameterize. And then in the operation part, right? If you choose path one, create. If a user feed this input, create, then I going to create that record in a database. If they are want to read a data, they have to pass an ID, and then they're going to read the data. And the third one just deleting. So they have to pass an ID to delete. It's going to delete a record. So just in case the user is passing an input is create, then I'm moving to this path and I'm generating the payload, whatever the payload it is expected by the service connector. Just I'm passing all this ID, name, address, and then I'm calling using same connection, post student. Post is nothing but going to create some record, and we are giving that payload. Similarly, when you are reading, right, so you have to feed this ID, name, address, age, student age, gender, and then we have called the same get student ID using a same connector, and then we passed pick list and ID. So we are getting back a response we are storing. Again for deleter, right, again it is expecting the same service connector, but the action is different. So now it is going to be a delete student ID, and we have to pass an input ID. Now, if you want to run this process, right, either you can use a browser to call, or you can use a Postman, or you can use a testing tool is readily available in application integration. You can use this. So now you have to create this structure, create AAA and 29. I'm going to check before creating this whether this record is already exist. No, there is no record, right, with the age of 29. I'm going to run this process, and the logs. So we passed operation here, right? If you see, operation is nothing but create. It is taking that route, and then it is generating a payload and creating the records. Right, this is created. Now I'm going to see in the top backside backend whether it's created. Yes, it's done. It's created, right? So now we haven't passed any ID because it's auto generated ID, auto ID. It is getting generated by SQL table, and so the record is getting inserted. Now the same operation, right, I can perform using a Postman. So for that, once you publish this process, you'll get an URL, endpoint URL that has been copied here, and go to Postman, paste here. Okay, you have to paste that endpoint URL, set the authorization, because since there is no authorization here, I mean set, and header content type application JSON, and a body, right, in a body you have to pass JSON value. So I'm going to create this record again. Age is 99 something. I'm going to create this record. So using Postman, just we are invoke our process, the process get invoked, and then it is going to create, right, AKF female, and the 999 has been created. So similarly, if I want to read the same data, I can pass this, pass here, and pass operation is read, same endpoint URL, all with a different operation. So I'm getting back as a response ID, name, uh, name, and the age of that student. So again, if I want to delete this record, let's say if I want to delete this 1000, okay, 1009 record, right? Just I put, sorry. Let me try to delete this. Operation is not delete. Now if you go to see what value passed 1009, so it's got deleted. Again, I'm going to delete this file 1010. It's gone. So if I pass different ID or operation, right? Then I'll take you this one. So we hit multiple operation, right? One is a delete or delete one. So it's going this way. In case if I did not, or a user did not pass any create or read or delete, then it's going to come here and it's going to throw an error. So we'll see how it goes. I'm passing delete one. So that operation is not defined in the process level. So we are expecting some bad request. Yeah, we are getting a bad request for 100, but failed. Okay, so that is how it's working. Even if you refresh this, you can see. Okay, so now it's reading and creating and deleting. It's done. So we're going to we have tested using a browser. We have tested using a Postman, and we have used a native testing tool. Okay, so the conclusion, right? Just we expose the data. So whatever the database level, right? We expose that data using an OData JDBC connector, and then that endpoint has been configured using a service connector. Top of that, we created a connection, app connection, and it is pointing to the service connector again. And we defined a lot of operation inside the service connector, and that service connector has been used in a process level, one for posting or creating a records, and another one is reading a records using that database and deleting. So all this has been completed now. With this, I'm concluding that OData demo is completed. Um, the next part is thank you for your valuable time and Q&A. If you have any queries, maybe you can ask me now.
Hello everyone, please post your questions in the Q&A box. We'll try and answer them. Over to you, Chandra.
Yeah, Vrinda.
Can we please
Team,
question?
team, you can post your question on Q&A so that I can answer if you have anything. I can take it up. Yeah, I got on Q&A question. So, does Salesforce support OData exposure? And yeah, I think in a Salesforce, right, we do support OData. We can enable the same options, right? You can export all the object, whatever it's Salesforce, right? That can be exposed as a OData, and we can consume the data from Salesforce as well. The same operation you can perform on the Salesforce side as well. Okay. So yeah, from another one, right? What version does support for TLS 1.2 edition? So I think for now OData, right? OData exposing um, the jar file which you are using. It's currently a newer version. I think if you are using 1.1 TL 1.1 or older version, it won't support. So definitely you need to use 1.2. So you have to check with the comfortable driver that has to be placed in the respective secure agent location, and then you can run your OData thing. So yeah, I think I answered your question. And another one, how is pagination supported in this case? So when you are enabling OData, right? So there is an option in case if a data volume is huge, if we want to perform pagination, definitely this can be available. So in a response, right, you can find that link, new link, which is tells you what next, what record has to be accessed in the next level. So there is a reference link is available. You can configure that as a link in our process. Maybe if you want to do a pagination, you want to extract all the data for a specific data set, definitely you can do that as well. So there is a link. I think you can go through that document which I provided. The same link, it's available, and in the same link you can find that. uh, you can find that pagination part. And another one is, can we access OData from CDI as a business service? Yeah, good point here. Yeah, you can definitely you can create it. Maybe you have to generate a Swagger file. Once you generate a Swagger file, you can use a REST v2 connector in order to connect in CDI, right? So you have to configure that REST v2 connector, and it has to be pointed to Swagger, which we generated. And then on top of that, you have to create a business service where you have to use it in a CDI mapping, and you can invoke the same procedures.
Chandra, we have another
And
question. Goes like this: please let me know how to achieve this proposal if I don't have a JDBC connection.
okay, if you don't have a JDBC, I think you should have a JDBC here. Otherwise, the OData is not supported. So definitely you should have JDBC. JDBC should have, and then you have to connect. You have to place a jar file as well. Or maybe if you want to do a pagination, I think you can use a CA process. So there is a concept called the dash service, which is readily available. You can use that option, but it is not a OData. It is just you are querying a database using a CA process, and then you are doing. We have to do top of that. You have to do a customization. So there is no direct way to access OData. Instead, you can create a CA process, and you have to do all this customization. If you have a JDBC, then directly you can expose the database data as OData, and then you can consume it in CA or some other process.
Thank you, Chandra.
I hope I answered your question. And I got one more. So, can view be made available as a OData? Yeah, that is possible because we exposed a table only in this example. But in case you have a view in your organization that can be exposed as a OData, so you can configure when the filter object filter, right? You can configure that as one of the property, and you can feed the view name, and then we can extract it. Okay. So you can top of the view, maybe you can apply all this logic, whatever the logic you want, you can apply, you can create a view, and then that view can be configured as a OData in a connection, and then you can use it in a CA process. That is very well, we can configure it.
Thank you, Chandra. Let's wait for some more time. Everybody, please post your questions if you have any in the Q&A box. Let's wait for some more time before we can end this session. Also, just wanted to call out that the session is being recorded, like all Tech Tuesdays webinars, and will be available in Informatica Support YouTube channel and the Success portal, from where you'll also be able to download the slide deck. Please put in your feedback and suggestions in the post webinar survey. If you have any suggestions for future sessions, also let us know through the survey. Yeah, looks like we have answered all the questions. If we have failed to answer any of the questions, we'll get back to you right after this session. Thanks everyone for joining. Hope everyone is safe. Thanks once again to Chandra for setting aside some time for this wonderful session. Thanks a lot. To see you on our next Tech Tuesdays webinar. Thank you.
Thank you all.